IVM.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of All Things Policy. My name is Shambhavi, and joining me today on this podcast is my colleague Sarthak. Recently, there has been a lot of news about India's rank in the Global Hunger Index. We are currently ranked 101 out of 116 countries. Earlier, we also had the NFHS survey which came out, which showcased about how we are doing poorly on malnutrition rates. And therefore, it is not very surprising that the government is thinking of taking steps to kind of improve our standing as far as nutritional requirements in the country goes. One of the steps that has been recommended is fortification of rice. The idea is that all rice that is given out through the PDA scheme and the midday meal program will be fortified with iron and vitamin A by the year 2025. The idea is over the next 3 years to spend an estimated 2,500 crore every fiscal year. And the objective of doing this is that anemia is quite prevalent in the country, and fortifying rice, which is a staple diet across the country, with iron can help improve nutritional outcomes in the intended targets. We are going to be discussing this policy today. Does it make sense? Is there evidence to show that fortified rice actually works? And what could work if not fortified rice? As a disclaimer, add that this podcast is based on a session that was taken by Dr. Anurag from St. John's Medical Research Center at Takshashila Institution as part of one of our workshops as part of our GCPP program. To discuss today, I also have Sarthak. So let's deep dive into what this policy is about and where do we actually go from here.
So thanks, Shambhavi, for having me here on this podcast. So before we start, Shambhavi, I just had a couple of queries. The first thing is, what is this mandatory fortification of rice policy, and what is the target here? When the government is thinking of implementing it, or have they already started implementing it? And what is the rationale behind having fortification of rice? Why rice?
Right. So I think there have been pilot schemes which have been on the way for a long time across India, where we are fortifying staples, right? Obviously, when we think about fortification, the first thing I think that comes to our head is salt. We know that iodine fortified salt has been around for a while, that people who do not live near coastal areas and who do not have access to iodine, which comes from coastal salts, usually suffer from iodine deficiency and show symptoms of that. And after a lot of scientific inquiry into what was causing those symptoms, mostly goiter, it was found that it was a lack of iodine, and therefore fortifying something as simple as salt was going to actually help improve outcomes for those symptoms, and therefore we have a success story in the form of iodine fortified salt. Now, if you think of something, but that's again limited to a geographical belt and limited because of access to a particular nutrient. Now you're looking at iodine and you're looking at the entire country, because we have seen through NFHS reports that iron deficiency, particularly in women and younger children, is prevalent throughout the country. So you want to look at something that is staple, that is easy to fortify in a way. And the advantage of fortification is that you're anyways eating rice. Now you're just eating rice with something. So you're not doing a behavioral change. No one is asking you to change what you're eating to something different, which could have problems related to adoption of that dietary change, right? So you're anyways eating rice. Now I'm just going to give you a rice which has iron. You don't have iron, which is causing anemia. So hey, look, that equation kind of solves itself. That's the idea behind food fortification and looking at rice. One of the things I wanted to clarify here is that this works. Fortification is a health program that is applicable to large swaths of population, right? So it's not like a temporary sort of issue. For example, anemia in pregnancy, which happens for a temporary time in response to the fact that because the mother is also raising a fetus, there's increased requirement of iron, and if the mother's diet doesn't provide for that iron, then temporarily she might suffer from anemia. That's a unique kind of situation. It's not generally found in the population. It is not permanently found in the woman either, right? There you look at supplementation.
Okay.
You will give iron tablets, folic acid tablets to the pregnant lady, and we have separate programs for those, right? And that's a supplementation program. Whereas if you find a deficiency generally present in the population and you want to target that, then a health program can run on basis of fortification.
Yeah, so thanks for giving the clarification here and for identifying the difference between fortification and supplementation. In fact, I was also going to that point. So there are different studies related to the advantages of fortification. In fact, I was referring to some of these studies. Now, so fortification is basically a solution to the problem, right? So there is a problem, policy problem out there. The problem here is, maybe in case of India, we do not have a population which is well nourished. There is massive amount of malnutrition. Some form of nutrients are lacking among our population, and that is the problem we are trying to tackle. Now, for any policy problem, we have to think of different kind of alternative ways to solve it, and fortification can be one of the ways. But yes, as you pointed out, supplementation is also can also be considered as an alternative. Then you can also consider another alternative, for example, diversifying the diet of individuals. And then we need to evaluate all these alternatives and decide which alternative works well, which doesn't work well. So here, at least the studies that I referred to, they found out that fortification is one of those methods which is very cost effective. And how they have found out this thing? They find out that the cost that is required to avert one death, that is quite low when it comes to fortification. It is comparatively much higher when it comes to supplementation or diversifying the diets. So cost required to avert death is lower. And some studies also looked at another advantage of fortification. What they're doing is they're trying to measure the benefits that you are getting out of fortification, and they are comparing it with the cost that is incurred in fortifying, right? And here again, the benefits refers to the benefit to the individuals in the short term, to the benefit to the individuals in the long run, and also benefits that can be there to the society, to the economy in the long run. Now, again, one economic concept here, the concept of positive externalities, right? When a person is well nourished, right, he or she is getting the right kind of nutrients, then that person's labor productivity might increase. That person's physical development, cognitive development will also happen. That person will be more capable to learn things in school, to go to school, to get educated, will be gainfully employed in future. And as a result of which, the society economy gets benefited. And as more people have the right kind of health status because of nutrition, the right kind of nutrition, the prevalence of diseases will also be low. If the prevalence of diseases is low in the society, again, the society benefits. So these are some advantages that I came across for fortification. But yes, there is, I mean, again, there are a lot of constraints, conditions here. It's not that you can just have fortification policy everywhere. There are different kinds of constraints, and in fact, there are some of these caveats will come to that. Any other advantage, Shambhavi, that you can think of fortification?
So, look, the basic advantages of fortification is that A, it is easy to do them at scale, right? It's just convenient to fortify food at scale rather than say diversify diets, because there's you'll have different food plates all across the country, and then if you say that we're going to diversify them and we want to create this ideal food plate, then it means you need separate subsets of programs running. Whereas food fortification, I think, is more convenient. And the other, as I mentioned before, is there is no behavioral change required. So in those terms, food fortification seems like a very easy kind of a solve for a problem. I can see why it is appealing. I think if you'd asked me a few months ago, even I would have been like, yeah, food fortification just makes sense. But really, does it? I think that's the question. I think, and you brought out a really good point, right? it's all about trade-offs.
Yeah.
And I think before this is a policy problem, this is a science problem. Food fortification will work if you can show that for all of your target audience, um, it is the lack of access to iron that is causing anemia.
Hmm.
Right? If that is true, then yes, maybe giving iron in the form of fortified rice might work. But anemia is a very complex, multifactorial disease. There can be multiple reasons for why people are suffering from anemia. It could be because A, they don't have access, B, they're eating iron through their diet, but it's not in the correct form. C, they're eating iron, but it's not being absorbed for a variety of other reasons. So there are multiple factors on what can cause anemia that is not same throughout the country, and therefore just pumping in more iron might not be useful. Let's come to this cost versus benefit aspect after a few messages from our advertisers.
Hey everybody, it's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, DJ and Ashwin discuss how Pakistan won against India, ending its 29-year World Cup streak, and discuss some of the other matches from the Super 12 round of the T20 World Cup. On Agla Station Adulthood, learn all the skincare essentials with dermatologist Puneet Sarogi as Ritasha and Ayushi ask him about skincare routines. On Hans Fani, listen to an interesting story, Dustbin Mein Peak, about how the government targets the common man to divert people's attention from political corruption. On the Habit Coach Kannada podcast, Ashton introduces the concept of a sleep primer and how we can use it for better. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Slay Coffee, Intel, Kotak Mahindra Bank, and Oxfam India. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Okay, welcome back from our break and continue discussing the cost versus benefits of mandatory food fortification.
So, Shambhavi, before we resume our conversation, just one thing I wanted to add. Just like you mentioned, right, that it's first a science problem, then a policy problem. So here again, we have a learning here when it comes to policy analysis or policy formulation. Right, whenever we decide any policy, we first evaluate different alternatives, and but before evaluating all the alternatives, we need to have the problem definition in place. It should be precise, it should be clear, and it should be backed by evidence, right? So in case of India, let's say there is a problem of malnutrition, we have to be very very clear among which communities it is there, which section of the population is there, which geography it is there. And since, as you mentioned, that again anemia can be because of multiple reasons, we have to specify that. So that way, whatever policy solutions we are thinking of will be aligned with the policy problem. So maybe right now, whatever discourse is there, whatever narrative is there, that maybe food fortification is a solution to the malnutrition problem, is not correct, because we have possibly not defined our problem in a very specific manner, in a precise manner.
Exactly. And I think your point about empirical evidence is extremely important. And we will share links to some of Professor Kurpat's recent articles on this podcast. Do have a look at him, where he also talks about the fact that look, a lot of our fear of anemia, that hey, we have got more than 50% of the population seems to be anemic, comes from the NFHS survey, which looks at pinprick blood from the finger, and that's not the most accurate measure of looking at anemia. And if you do venous blood collection in the same population, they have shown that your anemia levels are actually lower. So, we have kind of aggravated the problem more than what it actually exists. So, we might not actually have as much anemia burden as we think we do, which is one data point that definitely needs clarification, because that will massively affect the benefit of bringing in food fortification. B, like Sathak you mentioned, we need to figure out which are the groups where we are seeing anemia, because those are the groups that we want to target. We don't want to target everybody, because simply pushing in iron in your body is also not a good idea, because iron can actually cause issues. So just because currently we believe that a majority of our population is anemic, therefore we are trying to fortify rice. But if a majority of our population is not anemic and we end up overdosing some people with iron, they can actually have health problems that will arise out of it. So on the demand side itself, we need to have a lot more clarification on a what is the level of anemia. So is it really that bad that we need to fortify rice for everybody? And b, who is it that actually requires this sort of supplementation of iron?
Yeah. So one thing, if you are, let's say, able to identify that, right? So who needs supplementation, and we provide them fortified rice. So in that case, will it help address the problem?
So, if we can show that there is a particular group of people who have anemia because they do not have access to iron, and that's the sole reason why they might require why they have anemia, then yes, you could say we could fortify rice and send it to them, and that should help them get over anemia, right? Improve their nutritional outcomes, and that is again one of the alternatives for that target group. And then the question is, if we are limiting ourselves to that size, then is food fortification the best way forward? I have to mention here about food fortification is on how rice actually gets fortified, because it's not that you're just adding something to rice. So you take the rice, you have to make it into a powder, then you add the mix of fortificants that you want. Then it is again put into shape, right? And then if you consider that not everybody in India eats the same rice, I mean, there are thousands of varieties of rice that you eat, then how would you fortify those? Would you fortify all of them? I mean, there are ambiguities in the program that I'm not very clear on, but will you fortify only a certain varieties of rice, or if there are rice varieties which are used across the country, will we fortify all of them? And there can be differences that creep in when you try to fortify rice. I mean, if you think about it, you're taking it, you are completely breaking up its structure, you're making it into a powder, and then you are then putting it back into shape. For some people, it might cause issues. So it's not, rice fortification by itself is not a very simple kind of
Hmm.
procedure to do.
And also sometimes, I mean, nutrients also do not work in isolation, right? I mean, maybe you are providing iron right now with rice, but maybe some other nutrients are also required for optimal absorption of this iron. And in case of India, generally people, at least the targeted categories, right? So they might not be having the other nutrients in place which will be required for absorption of iron.
Right. So there are two interesting things that, so for, like you said, you need certain nutrients to help in absorption of the iron, and actually there are certain nutrients which will prevent the absorption of iron. So for example, calcium will outcompete iron. So if you have palak paneer, it is less likely that you might think that you are eating palak and therefore getting a lot of iron, but the calcium in the paneer might actually outcompete for it. So how much nutritional value you actually gain out of it is something that requires to be determined. And that is why I think there is a lot more focus from public health experts saying that, look, let's try and design the correct plate of food through which we can give all of these nutrients to our target population, instead of saying that we'll just fortify and we'll just push the nutrients in, because that might not end in you achieving the final outcome that you want. And I think that's where a lot of the public health experts are now trying to prove and focus that we're spending all of this money on trying to fortify iron without really knowing whether this iron fortified rice will be of any help.
Yeah. So first of all, there is the issue of whether we have this much amount of anemia in the country. Secondly, whether rice fortification is going to solve the problem, because you don't know whether this whatever you're fortifying, right, whether it will be absorbed in the body or not. Apart from that, I would also assume that there might be some unintended consequences. Like for example, let's say there is mandatory fortification of rice. It might lead to a situation where the demand for naturally iron rich food might decrease. There are some food which have iron, right? So maybe the demand for this can decrease. Apart from that, just think of it, right? this entire process, as you just mentioned, it's not very simple. It's a complicated process. It requires blending machinery, which is also not cheap. In a country like India, where rice production is generally taken up by small scale informal producers, and access to finance, access to capital is not that easy. These small scale farmers, right, small scale millers, they will find it very difficult to procure this machinery and blend it with with iron, right? So they might also be at a disadvantage. This policy might favor the large producers, large millers. And already, I mean, we have seen how the agriculture sector has been impacted in recent times. It might lead to a situation where they are further impacted. So there are a host of unintended consequences as well, which we have not thought about. And also, since we have so many small producers, right, providing them information, coordinating with them, it's not that easy. And ensuring that all these standards are maintained is not easy.
Right. And in addition to that, like I was saying earlier, it is unlikely that we will try and fortify all of the thousands of varieties of rice that we make. And if we say that, okay, there was only five varieties that we will fortify, that automatically means that we are going to kill off biodiversity. And that's not something that we should be aiming to do. So that's one problem. And the other is we are going to be pushing a lot of people to eat a lot of rice
Yeah.
to get their iron, right? And that's not ideal either. We want people to be getting their nutrients from a variety of foods, ideally. So instead of doing that, we're going to be saying that, hey, let's just eat rice, which is again not a good policy solution. If you look at what is recommended for a good diet, rice and grains actually form a very small part of that. Uh, and even within grain, rice forms a very small part. People are expected to eat other grains, pulses, etc. And so that's what we should be trying to push for is more diverse diets. I understand that there will be a logistics kind of problem with running health programs on that front. We've already seen a lot of backlash, for example, because the midday meal programs for a long time did not include eggs because of this perception that we should be promoting vegetarian food. And a lot of these, I mean, including a lot of non-vegetarian stuff in our food programs by themselves, will lead to better nutritional outcomes. But instead of focusing on that, we're we're luring ourselves into this fantasy that, hey, look, fortification is just going to be our silver bullet for solving all of our nutritional issues, and it's likely not. If we do not understand what the problem is, um, this solution might not just fit.
So, Shambhavi, what should be the steps that we should take? I think the first most important thing is, first we should have more data, more evidence, more research
Yeah.
about the nature of the problem.
Yep. The we need to quantitate the problem as well as figure out where the problem is coming from, and exactly whom do we need to target, and in the target populations again figure out what is causing the problem. So that has to be our first step.
Yeah.
The second has to be then to evolve health programs to target the specific problem in a specific subgroup of people. We cannot have this one blanket policy fits all kind of a solution,
Yeah.
given the nature of the problem that we're tackling. I think that's why it's again very important that we decentralize a lot of the decision making. Instead of saying that we're going to have this one central policy for across the country, that might not work in this case. Leaving it to local groups. We have seen, for example, a lot of success in parts of the country with Anganwadi kitchens. So, where money has been given for Anganwadi workers to grow vegetables in their own backyard and provide those as part of the midday meal program, and that has led to better nutritional outcomes for children, right? So decentralization so that local factors can be accounted for and food diversity to be included based on what is a local requirement uh, is probably the more effective solution. I think logistically it's going to be the more difficult solution to put in place, but if the decision making by itself is decentralized, we might be able to achieve that much easier.
Yeah. And one more thing. So, let's say the policy is in place, right? We need to periodically monitor it, right? Let's say you are fortifying rice, but people are not getting benefited by it, or maybe prevalence of anemia continues, then we have to rethink about it, right? So we have to have some monitoring mechanism. We need to inform people. We need to again update our policies according to that. And also we need to have some sort of sunset clause as well, right? Should we be continuing rice fortification forever, or there should be some objective, some indicator on the basis of which you will implement the policy, right? So maybe for the next few years, or maybe the anemia levels fall by this percentage. So some form of sunset clause should be there here as well.
Yeah, I agree. It seems that this policy is in place. So the least we can do now is monitor and see if it is working or not. We can't just leave it like that and hope that it will work, and have plans in place if it doesn't actually lead to the outcomes that we desire.
So Shambhavi, this was a very interesting conversation. So the government has announced a policy, but I think we should be focusing on the nuances, and we should look at all the different dimensions before rolling it out at a pan India level. And yeah, as we saw, any policy, it needs to be backed with empirical evidence. And even if after it has been implemented, we need to collect more evidence, we need to collect feedback, and accordingly review our processes. So this is what should also be taken up in this particular policy. So thanks, Shambhavi, and thanks to our audience for tuning in. We'll meet again in one more episode of All Things Policy.
Thank you.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST, or our website takshashila.org.in.
Come learn and experience the ABCDs of being queer with me, Shunetro,
and me, Farhad,
on our show Gay BCD.
The two of us take you through our stories and experiences of being gay men in the city of Mumbai and have candid
and sometimes downright scandalous
conversations about sexuality, gay culture, and everything in between.
Catch new episodes of Gay BCD every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get all your podcasts from.
सफर, रास्ते, मंजिल और मुकाम अक्सर ये हमसे कुछ कहना चाहते हैं, पर हम हैं कि अपनी रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में इन्हें सुनने से कतराते हैं। नमस्ते दोस्तों, मेरा नाम है केशव चतुर्वेदी और मैं आपको ले चलूंगा कुछ ऐसे सफर पर जहां आपको एक नया नजरिया मिलेगा सफर और मंजिलों को देखने का। आइए इन किस्से कहानियों में डूब जाएं। हर मंगलवार और शुक्रवार